welcome back everyone. I'm going to go over the details for the upcoming competition happening on July 9th, 2024, which features the chocolate ice cream cone meta, a new item that's been added to the game and parts of a new production chain that I'll just refer to as the ice cream production chain. Afterwards, I have a build showcase prepared to give you a good idea on how to make a competitive design for this competition. And in the end, I'll show you how you can receive a free Common Rose Bush NFT if you're interested. As always, you can find the official information in the Common Ground World Announcements channel in the Gala Games Discord, and I have an invite link to the Gala Games Discord in the description of the video. Competition begins July 9th, 2024 and ends 3 days later. Meta is to sell chocolate ice cream, although it is called chocolate ice cream cones in game, but I will also just refer to it as chocolate ice cream. The trade time is 20 seconds and 1 gasoline per trade. Biome is a desert with an ocean on the east and a river on the south. The other two edges are a desert. This is what the starting biome looks like, and this starting town is actually pretty interesting because you also start off with 2 water pumps and 2 paved roads, another fuel storage, and you also start off with a warehouse, industrial worker, and a couple of windmills, so you can immediately start making energy. You also have 2 windmills and a couple of sugarcane fields, so you could immediately start making sugar as well since you have everything there. Oh, and you also start off with some tree farms, so you have everything set up for a sugar production rush and the energy to get you started with gold production if you want to go that route, because you do want energy to build the forges, and that is actually what I recommend. As usual, I do recommend you sell gold to get all the cash that you need. Let's go over the cash boost here. Sugar is cash boosted from 2,300 to 6,000. That's why you start off with sugar, so you can sell sugar at the start, but like I've said many times, it is difficult to scale this up past a certain point because you can only have so many green timer windmills before you get to a point where you have to have red timer windmills, and then it's just not optimal. You could do sugar to get all the cash that you need, but I still recommend you do gold. It is the better way to go. Ice blocks is cash boosted from 4,500 to 12,000 each, which is a very nice cash boost, but you can't really do ice blocks at the very start. Now, if you do have the right NFTs, you can actually do an ice rush from the very start. The first minute or two, just start crafting a lot of ice blocks and selling them. That would be the best way to do it. That is if you have the NFTs. But if you don't have those NFTs, then this isn't something that you can do. And I don't think it's worth making a bunch of water facilities or master wizards and Santa's factories to provide passive cold to those water facilities or master wizards, just so that you can create a lot of ice blocks so you can earn more cash. This is an expensive process and it takes up a lot of time, and it's just not worth doing that. Of course, you will need to make ice blocks for the final meta, so if you do that setup and start selling those ice blocks in the meantime, that's completely okay, but scaling that up, in my opinion, is not worthwhile. And the star boost, of course, chocolate ice cream cones will give 50,000 stars for each one. Now, something interesting I just noticed in this announcement, the standard cash value of chocolate ice cream cones are 125,000 for each one that you sell. It doesn't actually say anything about it being cash nerfed for this competition, but I just realized that within the game, if you were to sell chocolate ice cream cones, you would actually only receive 53,410 cash for each one that you sell, which means that it is in fact cash nerfed. You only get about half the cash. It's actually less than half the cash than their standard value. But don't worry, the build is still going to be cash positive, but I only just realized that they were supposed to sell for their standard cash value. At least that's what the announcement says, but I couldn't find anything about it saying that it will give less cash for this competition. The reward structure for this competition is the standard Gala rewards for placing in the top 1,200 in the leaderboard, and the only other thing to talk about is the craft requirements of the chocolate ice cream cone. Chocolate ice cream cones are crafted in the new building called the ice cream parlor and require 2 ice blocks, 2 salt, 1 chocolate bar, 1 milk, and 1 ice cream cone in order to craft. Ice cream cone is also a new craft that is crafted in the bakery, requiring 1 sugar, 3 cornstarch, and 1 milk. Ice cream parlor is a special building unlike many other buildings because it is actually positively impacted impacted by the cold proximity effect. Normally, buildings are not impacted by anything, and some buildings are negatively impacted by certain things like dirty or shade. For example, the windmills, they are negatively impacted by shade, but the way the ice cream parlor works is that it starts at the slowest craft time possible, which is 16 minutes in order to make a chocolate ice cream cone. However, if you have one passive cold, the craft time becomes 8 minutes. With two passive cold, the craft time becomes 4 minutes. And with 3 or more passive cold, the craft time becomes 2 minutes. In this setup that I'll explain in the build showcase, you will notice that all of these ice cream parlors have 3 passive cold, and this allows them to craft the chocolate ice cream cones in 2 minutes, which is their fastest craft time. Now it's time for the ice cream cone build showcase that I created. Let's get right into this one. Unfortunately, I didn't have that much time to test it, so it's only been running for 2 hours, and I did do another test before this that was also only 2 hours. Both tests show that it produces 67 chocolate ice cream cones per hour, so I believe that is the stable rate. So I'll scroll through the production monitor and then talk about some of the important production rates that are relevant to the craft requirements of the chocolate ice cream cones. Starting with ice blocks, which are being crafted in the Master Wizards. I'm making 160 ice blocks per hour, which is enough for up to 80 chocolate ice cream cones per hour. As for the salt, I am making 142 salt. That's enough for 71 chocolate ice cream cones per hour. I am making 67 chocolate bars, which pretty much is what's limiting me from crafting more chocolate ice cream cones. For the milk, I have enough milk to make about 71 or 72 chocolate ice cream. And for the ice cream cones, I am crafting 68 of them per hour. That has to do with the amount of cornstarch that I'm making, which is 204 cornstarch per hour. It is 3 cornstarch for every ice cream cone that gets produced in the bakery. An interesting thing you may have noticed is that I am using some of the things that we started out with, such as the 2 water pumps, the fuel storage, the warehouse, the oil seep, of course. I'm using all of this for my gasoline setup because they basically provided it for us specifically for the gasoline setup. And although I don't think this is the most ideal setup for this build, I wanted to implement it to prove to you that it can be done, and it does work. This design does utilize some expensive buildings, but thankfully I'm able to sell enough chocolate ice cream cones to stay cash positive. I'll begin by explaining the windmill crafts, which are sugar, salt, and cornstarch production. I'm using 6 logger houses to collect wood from 16 tree farms. The wood gets taken to the windmills and the milk barns. I have 9 farm tractors in charge of collecting all the crops. I have 5 sugarcane fields laid out like this. Most of these spots have the 4 water that the sugarcane field requires. I have 7 salt fields next to the ocean. 6 of them have the 3 passive salty that they need because they're right next to the ocean, and one of them only has 2 passive salty, so it crafts brine slightly slower. All of that brine should get delivered to this silo, and the sugarcane should get delivered. Most of it gets delivered to this silo. Some of it does go into this silo, I believe. I also have 4 corn fields, and it also only requires 2 water, so some of these have at least 3 water. And I have a total of 41 windmills. 3 of them are on a green craft timer because they have no shade negatively impacting them, and the other 38 are on a red craft timer. The 3 that are on a green craft timer are crafting salt, and there are also 2 on a red craft timer crafting salt closest to this silo. Then I have 17 of them crafting sugar, all the ones on the west side, as well as these 2, and the ones touching the north side. All the other windmills over here are crafting cornstarch, also on the red craft timer. There's a total of 3 silos being utilized and 3 storehouses. For milk, chocolate, and ice cream cone production, I have 2 ATVs. They only cast 1 shade, that's why I have them close to the windmills. I have 10 milk barns barns and a total of 32 meadows for them to feed on. I have 6 cocoa trees right here. That cocoa should be all stored in this silo closest to the chocolate shops. I have 3 chocolate shops all crafting chocolate bars, and I also have 2 bakeries crafting ice cream cones. Both of these crafts utilize that milk as well as sugar. For the ice block and chocolate ice cream cone production, you are gonna want 3 passive cold. It is a requirement for ice blocks, and it is recommended for the ice cream parlors in order to craft chocolate ice cream cones as fast as possible, like I explained earlier. This setup right here utilizes 2 water pumps in order to provide the 2 passive water drums needed by the ice blocks. This isn't actually a requirement, so to say. You could utilize water facilities and manually craft the water drums, but it is a slower process. I highly recommend doing it this way. There is a pond in between those 2 water pumps, of course, and 2 master wizards are making the ice blocks. As you can see, they have at least 3 cold from the Santa's factories. So these 3 Santa's factories that I'm using, they're not actually crafting anything because I don't need them to craft anything. The reason I need to have them is because they provide up to 2 passive gold. They'll provide 2 passive gold for the buildings next to them or the tiles next to them, and then 1 passive gold for the other tiles away from them, like so. And I have 3 of them in order to provide all of these buildings with at least 3 passive gold as needed. So there are 5 ice cream parlors all making chocolate ice cream cones. I'm using a compact gasoline setup, as I call it, with 2 water pumps connected to the ocean. You don't need a pond for this, although this pond is here because you need it for the passive water on these salt fields. These are the water pumps that you start with, so you don't actually need to build these. And you start with 2 paved roads. You start with 1 here, which I'm keeping, and you actually start with 1 here. I actually realized I didn't keep that paved road, and I decided to build 2 of them right here instead. So the paved road is required in order to build the power plant. It needs to be next to a paved road. So I have 2 power plants providing the 6 passive energy required by the refinery making gasoline, which also has the 2 passive water drums. And right next to it, I have the refinery making petroleum, which only needs 4 energy and 1 water drum. And that is right next to the fuel storage. In this setup that I have it right here, I have the refinery making petroleum facing this. So it takes just a tiny bit longer to deposit the petroleum. That way I'm making more gasoline than I am petroleum. If you were to set it up like this where they're facing each other, you are going to be overproducing petroleum, and in that case you're going to need to auto sell petroleum so that you don't jam up the fuel storage with too much petroleum. But you can completely avoid that by just having it face like so. That way you end up with more gasoline than you do petroleum. Also, I'm not utilizing any oil pumps because I do start off with the oil seep, which provides the passive crude oil required to craft the petroleum, and it also provides passive crude oil for these 2 power plants so that you can easily craft energy for them, which is just used to build all the buildings. And you do start off with this warehouse as well. I decided to keep it, although you don't need it for the final design, but you could store your energy there for your building purposes. I did build a lumber mill right next to there, so this lumber mill has everything it needs to craft lumber. Of course, it just needs the wood. And once again, this isn't required for the final design, but it is just there for the lumber that you are going to need to make for all the buildings that you need to build. And the last thing is the 1 trade depot. I'm just using 1 of them because the trade times are low. Here's what the auto sell looks like. I do have most of the items with a quantity of 10, with the exception of sugarcane, brine, and corn. I have those with a quantity of 15. Here's what the build looks like on the visualizer. Total cost is 28 million. Wages are 29,170 per minute. You will have no issue paying the wages with the amount of chocolate ice cream cones that this is making. This visualizer file comes with 2 stages. The first stage shows you what the starting biome looks like, and of course the second stage is the finished design. You can find the file for this visualizer on my Discord server, and an invite link to my Discord is in the description of the video. No NFTs are required to reach this production rate. I don't really have any more advice on how to push this rate even higher. I know that it has all the sugar, milk, and salt that it needs to reach 70 per hour. It just needs a bit more corn starch and cocoa, but then you're gonna have trouble balancing chocolate. Room for improvement is there. I believe you could reach somewhere between 70 to 75 chocolate ice cream cones with this design with a little bit more optimization, and probably up to 80 chocolate ice cream cones per hour with a different design if you did not use this gasoline setup. And I say that because I believe there are other ways to have more green timer windmills than I am using in this design, and that would save up a lot more space, and then you'll have space for more crops or other buildings that you need to reach a higher chocolate ice cream cone production rate. Now I'm going to show you how to redeem a code to receive a free Common Rose Bush NFT. This NFT is mostly decorative, but it does have some utility, so it provides you a 0.1% movement speed bonus to all the units in your town whenever you place this down. It only takes up 1/16 of a tile. It's easy to place down almost anywhere if you're using the subgrid placement. Now you're probably not going to notice any difference with this utility, but hey, it's a free NFT, and this NFT really doesn't have that much value. If you're trying to sell it, you could probably get a couple of cents, and that's if anybody even wants to buy it. But anyways, the link is in the description of the video. You're gonna want to either click on the games.gala.com/redeem link or go to games.gala.com yourself. Go to the top right, click your profile picture, and then click account in order to go to your account settings. From here, you're gonna see a section that says redeem code. This is gonna be that games.gala.com/redeem section, and then you're going to want to copy and paste that code in the description. That code is TTCGWROSEBUSHCO. It's basically a treasure tapper code. Treasure tapper is some game that Gala Games has on Telegram, I believe, but I'm not going to go too much into that. But as of recording this video, this code works for everybody once per account, I believe. And when you redeem it, you're going to get a free Common Rose Bush NFT. Now I already redeemed it, but I'm going to show you a screenshot of what it looks like when you successfully redeem it. And then you can go to your inventory and you'll see the NFT, or you should be able to place it within a couple of minutes in Common Ground World. I didn't utilize subgrid placement for this design, but if you happen to have some space, then this is what the Common Rose Bush NFT looks like right there. And like I said, 0.1% movement speed, you're not gonna notice a difference, but hey, there you go. That's going to be everything. So hopefully you found this helpful or informative. Please leave a like, leave a comment, consider subscribing if you haven't done so. I do have links in the description on how to support the channel if you're interested. And as always, I appreciate the support and thank you for watching.